Hi, welcome back to another episode on the Healthy Wisdom series with Dr. Jen Chen. Hey, you guys, today we're going to continue our discussion on the different concepts that surround, governance and the parallels that we can draw from that and apply that into our lives. It is really kind of a technical thing, but I feel like if we can connect the dots, I'm going to try to do it in as clear of a sense as I can, and hopefully we'll be able to kind of see, how this whole system can apply to our lives. All right, so what's the definition of governance? Governance is a system by which organizations are directed and controlled. And by directed, we mean the results and the outcomes, and the controlled portion is how they execute and stay on strategy. So the governance structure would be kind of like a way to specify, sort of how distribution or assignment of rights and responsibilities amongst the different participants in the organization. It also spells out like the rules and the procedures for making decisions on the organization's affairs. And also it provides structure through which organizations' objectives are set, the means of attaining those objectives, as well as how they monitor their performance. Now, I know from like sort of the general sense, it's really hard to see like, well, how does that apply to my life? Like, what are the sort of parallels you're trying to draw here? Well, the way I see it is the organization, you can consider that to be you. Your family unit is the organization that we are talking about. And the governance is the system, right? So there is a system by which we can actually contribute, or I should say, not contribute, but by which we can actually run our lives, right? By using the system. And so, for example, in the structure, if we're talking about distribution of rights and responsibilities, if we're assigning certain roles to particular people in our lives. So, for example, if it's in your life, your husband, there are some sort of expectations, some roles, and some of the responsibilities that he or she may take. So your partner is going to be one of those participants in this organization. The second part is, like the rules and procedures, the parallel that we draw in our lives is actually what I would say the core values or how we set standards by which we actually do carry out our lives. Because these standards and these values, the core values that we kind of use to guide us, are going to be those things that we use to make our decisions on everything that's involved in the affairs of the organization, which is our lives, which is you, correct? And thirdly, to provide the structure through which the organization's objectives, meaning like your objectives. So what are some of the goals that you have in your life that you are setting or that you are laying out so that you can, take the steps to actually achieve it or to make this particular event happen for you, the means by which you attain those objectives, right? And also, how do you actually monitor the performance? So like in our lives, how do you actually, so the activity we did last week is actually one of those monitoring pieces that you can use, and it is quite often used in how we govern different boards and board directors on those organizations. We actually do look at, okay, are there any like sort of pieces that we need to address in order to make the board a much more effective and successful and responsible part of that organization, right? And so on the same token, we certainly have the same thing that we can actually do to monitor our own performances. So by identifying what does, a successful sort of marriage look like, for example, and then what are some of the barriers, for example, communication, do you communicate with your partner? Do you do things together? Do you take the time to connect? Those are just really just off the top of my head, things that I can think of as, potential barriers that I've witnessed in a lot of the relationships that I don't officially counsel, but, they do show up in my office when we are working on people's joints and their muscles, because it really shows up as a lot of tension, that presents in the neck and the shoulders portion of our treatment. So, like, how do we monitor that performance? The governance structure actually does give you, different ways that you can actually elect to monitor that performance. So for example, the scale of 1 to 10, that's a very simple way to, get you started, to keep in line with the example that we have given just now, in terms of relationships, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, you may choose to ask your partner, hey, how are we doing this month or this quarter or, this past year, in terms of, how each participant or each responsible party is feeling about the relationship as a whole in your lives, right? And so, like, for example, you may say, well, I feel like, we probably are kind of at about a 7 because I feel like, and then you go into, well, what would make it a 10, if we're currently at a 7, so as we've identified, potential, communication issues. So for example, if they had improved communication, you would say, I feel like, we need to have better ways to communicate with each other. Maybe it's how you are communicating certain things. Maybe it's the timing of how you're communicating, different, how do you say, like, opinions or ideas, or how you guys are interacting with each other. And say for in terms of like connectivity, like, are you guys spending, time with each other? Do you do date nights? And if you don't, perhaps maybe to improve from a score of 7 to 10, it would be a systematic way to say, hey, you know what, maybe we need to set aside some time away from the kids and actually just reconnect with each other, and maybe have like a once in a month, date night. So sort of some examples as to how, this governance structure and the different ways that having a structural sort of system can actually help us in terms of how we organize our lives and how we can monitor or assess, how it is that we are doing in different aspects of our lives. So as we break down the different topics in the coming episodes, we will definitely be able to see this a lot more clearly. Keep in mind, these first couple of episodes, we're trying to give you an overview so that you have a better understanding as to where we're coming from with these concepts, because if you don't have this background information, it might be a little bit hard to see the connection and grasp the different parallels that we're trying to draw from something that's a very corporate structural type of mechanism and applying that into our daily lives. So I wanted to make sure that, we have, some inkling as to where we're starting from. And then we can definitely do deep dives, in each of the episodes where we look at different aspects and guiding principles as we go along. So that's sort of the general gist of, sort of where we're heading. So I'm actually really excited to really dig in and move into like the meat and potatoes of the episodes coming up. But I definitely felt it was important to kind of set the stage and be able to kind of take it from a giving you the background, giving you the definition, so that when we actually dive in, we already have sort of the general framework from where we're working from. And then, when we do the deep dive, then we can just really get into, some of the key concepts and, develop some action items for you guys to be able to not just think about it, but actually do something about it, So, as you know, everything that I do, I love to make sure that it's, is something that you can actually take away and be able to apply to your life and not just be like, hey, I'm not just going to tell you a concept. I want you to actually be able to do and put it and apply it to your lives so that you may have the improvement and the beautiful, amazing life that you want to have. All right, Healthy Wisdomers, another pleasurable episode that we were able to share together. And I certainly thank you for listening and continuing to support this podcast. Please take a minute to subscribe. It's really important for us to continue to have the subscribers and the followers in order for us to continue to climb the rating systems, because that's how we're going to be able to kind of sustain what we're doing here. And and that's another mechanism for our reach to increase. And so I'd love for you to help me out in this sense, and let's see if we can actually invite more people to join us on this journey. This is the Healthy Wisdom series with Dr. Jen Chen. I'll see you guys next week.